Boss, tell me what to do.
Hey, let's go live. Woo. Holy cow. Pond Boss, here we are. Holy cow. Hello, everybody. Bob Loves the Pond Boss. Chasing my tail today. I'm apologize for being late, but got here as quick as I could, I promise. It's been an interesting few days, I'm here to tell you. And good gosh, I got so much to talk to you about, so much to tell you. It's just flat amazing. Last week, I planned to be here. Debbie and I are officially homeless now, which that's a good thing, I guess, if you look at it that way, which we do. So let's see here. Looks like I'm going to have to look on my phone to see all this. I see Troy Todd checking in, Travis Paul Smith, Richard Parrish, Justin Schink from the left coast. Hello, everybody. Blair Ulrigan, Kenny Sanderson. Hello, Kenny. Kenny made it back to Kansas. Wyatt, holy cow. I hope y'all as well. You know what? Let me just kind of update you guys. I do want to handle your questions. But as you all know, that you guys have followed this show quite a bit and follow Pond Boss in general, we Debbie and I sold Lusk Lodge at Kamatoot. So now we're looking for the last place we'll live. And we're looking around Granbury, Texas, which I've got a pretty cool backstory there, which I'll share at some point. But right now we're hanging out in our RV. Now, I'd planned to do this show last Wednesday, but we got such a late start because that was the last day to finish moving out of the house. I did not realize how much of a hoarder that I am, and Debbie is or was. But the difference between Debbie and me is the majority of the stuff I hoarded ended up in the dumpster, and she hoards high-end stuff that ended up in storage. So now we've got four climate-controlled storage units and a 40-foot container full of personal belongings, and we won't have nearly the room to put it in this next place. So anyway, now here we are hanging out near Washington, Texas, between Navasota and Brenham in the RV. And Debbie's gone with the grandkids. They have a baseball scrimmage tonight playing t-ball. And I had a pretty interesting day. I got to spend about 4.5 or 5 hours at the Aquaculture Research Center at Texas A&M, which was really, really fun, highly informative. Now, I'm on a brand new internet connection here, so I don't know how well it's going to work. So I'm going to watch and see, because I'm not so sure how well it's working, but we just got internet hooked up. And so at the experimental fish farm, they're doing some pretty cool stuff. I mean, they're raising everything from tilapia to catfish to saltwater species that they're learning how to breed and reproduce and propagate. They were hit pretty hard by that cold snap that we had a couple of weeks ago, and they lost a few fish from that. But it's just really, really pretty darn interesting. And then I got to spend about an hour with a longtime Pond Boss subscriber that lives south of College Station, Bernie Bernard. And Bernie has done some, he's a fascinating guy. I cannot wait to spend more time with him. But he's figuring out how to clear up muddy water on a small scale that might extrapolate into a bigger scale. So I'm pretty interested in hearing what he's done and trying to figure out how he's doing it. And actually, I'm pretty fascinated because he's a partner in a company that does oceanographic research on oil seeping up from the bottom of the ocean. They've got several 150-foot ships where they can go out and collect samples of ocean bottom soils and then analyze the chemistry of that. So he's a biochemistry engineer, oceanographer. Fascinating guy. So I'm going to go back through here and look at this. And, of course, you guys that have watched this show before, you know the drill. I've been in a hurry today all day long doing everything that I got to do. And I don't have a mug or a hat, but I'll get one. But you guys know. Click like. Put hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. And share this to your timeline, this video. And you'll be eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss mug and a hat. So there you go. So now, let's see here. Let me kind of... Danny Mac says I'm looking a little bit rugged. I'm feeling a little bit rugged. I'm feeling a little bit ragged. But it's a good ragged. I found a Diet Coke left over in the refrigerator from way back. There's Greg Grimes. Hey, Greg. Good to see you. Jason Rutledge. Let me see here. I'm going to scroll back here and see who all we got going on. Looks like we got about 50 plus folks that we know about. Greg Grimes. We love Greg Grimes. John Henry. David Vanderharder from San Antonio. There's Kim Moore. Robert Buckaloo from the great state of Mississippi. Dustin Crawley. Jim 10 got his January, February magazine. Boy, I tell you what, we had so much trouble with the post office. I guess they're still counting votes in Georgia because the magazine's mailed in Georgia. You know, and we still have people that did not. And that magazine hit the post office December 23rd. And I got reports of people receiving it last week. They better step it up. There's Joshua Flowers, fisheries biologist from Whitesboro, Texas. Let's see here. Justin Shake, did you like that series about, there were two-part series about the California pond? He wants to write another article about irrigation and how to use this pond for irrigation, so I think we're going to do that. Jonathan Stoddard wants to know, how soon can I start to restock tilapia in an East Texas pond? Oh yeah, I see the other things. So, Jonathan, I would wait until you know the water temperature cannot drop below 65. Now, even though they die at 52, they're real sluggish and lethargic even at 60. So, once you know your water temperature is 65 and going up, then you can stock tilapia, and go ahead and do it. You know, but wait. I mean, we usually get here in this part of the planet, we get our last freeze somewhere around Easter. So be sure that your water temperature, I hate to see you spend money, you know, $200 an acre or whatever you're going to end up spending on tilapia, and those fish belly up. It's not much fun watching them learn to do the backstroke. Mike Cottrell checking in. Mac, I'll be roaming close to your part of the country. I got to run up to Breckenridge in Albany area on Friday. Bill Russell, good to see you. Travis Paul Smith, do you miss the LL, yet, or did the money make it easy to let go? Let me tell you what, I miss it, but not that much, because I got to cherish it, live there for 13 years, and the new one, Les Lodge, 1, for you guys that don't know, burned down in 2005. We rebuilt, moved back in 07. So we got to live there 13 years, got to share it with literally hundreds of people. But what I don't miss is 4,600 square feet of house to take care of, which means we hire people to clean it. 3 acres of lawns, which I mowed. I didn't weed eat, but I mowed. 8 ponds, I guess 6 of them have fish. A cabin, a guest cabin. 8 res-bed gardens, flower beds, 6 feeders, a 2,700 square foot workshop, and a sawmill, and a tractor, and 2 pickups. So what I don't miss is taking care of all that, so I can go be good at what I'm good at. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, money never has driven me, or I would have gone and made a bunch. But if I could have figured that out, which probably could have, but I didn't. So, do I miss the place? No. I mean, I had plenty of time to kind of grieve on that. But I appreciate you asking me that. I tell you what I will miss is all the great times with people around there were some great ideas around the fire pit. There were some wonderful exchanges of conversation. And we had 2 Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondologies, which, oh, by the way, on that topic, we've got all our videos finished. I know several people have been asking about the premium content. I'll be meeting with the web developer Monday or Tuesday and get ready to start uploading that stuff. So we're not far away from launching premium content, which is going to cost, but it's worth it. I mean, the whole premise behind putting this content together is over, 4 decades of doing this. I've seen different people making some of the same mistakes. And when you make a mistake and you're a brand new landowner, it costs you in the back pocket. Now, my good friend Freeman Sawyer came up with a term that I love. He says, Bob, I want to spend time with you because I want you to help me keep from spending the dumb tax. I thought that was pretty cute, which basically is you don't know what you don't know. So in this pond and lake and land management business, I've tried to put together some really, really insightful information that people can use and pay less dumb tax. So Chris Arthur says, how do you feel about using lime to help with water clarity in a retention pond that is cloudy? I feel pretty good about that. Now, I don't feel or think that it's necessarily going to be the cure. I don't believe that it will be, that it's an absolute thing. Now, what lime does, calcium carbonate lime, by the way, let's qualify and quantify a little bit. Calcium carbonate or ag lime or dolomitic lime, that's the kind of lime you want to use. There's other kinds. There's hydrated lime, there's quick lime. You know, that kind of stuff is volatile. And it's not necessarily going to help the water clear up. But what happens if you get enough calcium carbonate in the water, your alkalinity goes up, it frees some of the calcium so it can bind with some of the clay. Now, depends on the kind of turbidity you've got. Do you have turbidity from a planktonic algae bloom? Is it because mud is stirred up? Does it look like chocolate milk? If it just depends. Lime is an answer, but it might not be the answer. There's other amendments. You know, there's gypsum, there's aluminum sulfate. Now, each one of those has its own little idiosyncrasies. So what I encourage people to do that have muddy water is do a little bit of trials and figure out why it's muddy. And I found out today, I should know this, but I just found out today spending time with Dr. Todd Sink, who's a fisheries extension specialist and operates out of the Aquaculture Research Center at Texas A&M University. Spent 4.5 hours with him today, and I didn't realize that they do water tests. I always send water tests to the Soil Sciences Lab at Texas A&M, and Todd says that he'll do some tests to help people figure out what they need for their fish ponds. Well, I'm sending water in to be analyzed for the chemistry of it, and then I interpret those results. You know, where Todd Sink will help interpret the results with us. So I'm going to see about sending some stuff up there. He's got some lab equipment where he can figure out if lime is the answer, if the water's stirred up and that's what's causing it to be muddy because of physical action, or if it takes, or what it would take to clear it up. So I'm going to do a little more homework with him and figure that out. So that's how I feel about lime with the water clarity. And it depends on why the water's murky. Todd Corey, what's the better feed supply? Fathead minnows or golden shiners? In Michigan, bluegill, largemouth bass, and perch. I'll tell you how I'm going to answer that. Hey, Drew, hey. Man, I just figured out where you're hanging out. I had no idea. I've been meaning to call you, but man, I've been up to my elbows in grandkids and internet connections and meetings and trying to get unpacked and moved in to this RV that you see behind me. But I am going to holler at you and kind of catch up. So Todd, here's how I'm going to answer that. I look at all these different things as tools in the pond management toolkit. Fathead minnows, I look at those as, even though they're animals, fish, I look at them as a tool. Golden shiners, I see those as a tool. So what I've tried to do is learn the lifestyles of each of these species of fish and how they interact with other species of fish. Whereas fathead minnows in Michigan, if you can buy those things for $3 or $4 a pound, might be worth it. But in Texas, they're $10 or $12 a pound. They're not, because they cannot establish in an existing bass lake. So if you got bass, bluegill, and yellow perch, odds are not high that fathead minnows will survive. But golden shiners, they probably will survive. Now, here's just a little short school on those two species of fish so you can make a good decision. If you guys don't know the difference between fatheads and shiners, listen to this. You're going to be entertained by the pond boss. Yeah. So, fathead minnows get to be about 2.5 or 3 inches long at the most. They lay their eggs on the underneath sides of firm objects, wooden pallets, rocks, dock pilings, PVC pipe. So they'll lay their eggs there, and they'll do that in a kind of a rolling spawn all year long. However, they live in the same niche as bluegill and bass and perch. So as soon as those babies are hatched, they get eaten. And if you've got enough bigger, bluegills and especially largemouth bass, they're going to eat the adult fatheads before they even get a chance to spawn. So they have a rolling spawn. Each nest of eggs may have 400 to 750 eggs per spawn. And what fathead minnows, their best purpose is to generate the first generation of bait fish in a brand new stock pond. That's what they work best. Now, golden shiners, on the other hand, they'll get to be 6 or 7 inches long, typically live 2.5 years. They're really fast. They run in schools. They lay their eggs once a year. They tend to lay their eggs along the edge of a pond in the grass. They may lay 3,000 or 4,000 eggs per female. Most of the time they have this endemic ovarian parasite that in subsequent years that they spawn, their number of eggs are cut way back. So they're not as successful in subsequent spawning years. So you got to depend on young of the year golden shiners to survive so they can perpetuate themselves, which typically they do. They're good forage fish for bass. They're really quick, so they can escape, they can survive, which is a key component in perpetuating themselves. So if they're quick and they can get out of the way and not get eaten all at once, then you can establish those things. They're predator fish, by the way, limited by their mouth size. They have tiny little mouths, but they'll eat bugs. They'll eat eggs off of nests. They're nest raiders. They'll go raid the nest of a bass if they can get away with it, if the bass doesn't eat them. So, there you go. Drew, hey, I do owe you a phone call. I'll do that. Jeremy Duckworth, thanks for, hey, man, I've missed you guys. I promise you, I've missed you guys. I missed last week. How do you get rid of mud bugs that are destroying my levee? I'm open to a humane way, but will do what's necessary. You can actually trap them. You can buy crawfish traps, and you can bait them with cut shad, and then you can actually catch crawfish. Mud bugs are crawfish. So I would dedicate some effort to trapping them, and the most humane way to get rid of them is to boil them and eat them. But that's what I do. I mean, you can buy crawfish traps online, watch some tutorials on how to bait them and how to run them. Now, what will happen is you can trap them to get their numbers down, but once you get a fishery established, their numbers are going to go down anyway because the bass are going to eat them. Tim Stewart, hey. I see Tim, the bee-man. Josh Flowers, the freeze is coming again, according to reports. I can pretty well tell you that on stocking those tilapia, I would hold off. I would hold off until mid to late April and just pay attention to your water temperatures. I tell you, everybody here, if you're managing a pond, one of the things you should do is check your temperatures about once a week, preferably twice a week. If you can do it on Monday and Thursday, or Monday and Friday, or Saturday and Thursday, I don't care. If you do it twice a week and then write it down, you can see the trends. Like when we had this harsh cold snap, our water temperatures went from 57 degrees to 33 degrees in 36 hours. But as soon as that freeze was over, our temperatures went from the lowest low of -3, 6 days later to 83. And our water temperatures went from 33 to 48 within about 4 days. So that and this, but if you'll track your temperatures a couple of times a week and write it down, you can see when your water temperature's staying around 65, moving up, and wait until the last freeze. Now that's like saying stop, turn right at the last stop sign. How do you know which one that is, right? So Travis Paul Smith, you're gonna have a pond at your new place. I'll tell you exactly what we're looking. Hey, there's Ann Shavetta. Hey Ann, good to see you, dear. Glad to see you checking in. You know what? Debbie and I are looking at a place near Lake Granbury, below Lake Granbury, in a place called Pecan Plantation. When I was a teenager, my parents bought a place on that river 5 miles as the crow flies from Pecan Plantation, and that's where I figured out I had a passion for fish. So Right now, we're looking for a place on the Brazos River that won't flood, so our grandkids can go out and traipse up and down that river like I did when I was a teenager, that fueled the passion that spews out of me every time I do this broadcast and every morning when I wake up. I can't help it. So shame on me if I don't expose those kids to something that, might influence them, at least give them a good taste for ecology and nature and that kind of stuff. We thought we wanted to find a place on Lake Granbury, but good gosh, those things are $200,000 more than they're worth. So we probably won't do that. Look at there. There's David Schneiderman. Let's see. David says, pond dye is in. Beautiful blue water. Is there a way to check to see if we're blocking enough sunlight? Setchi disc for a dyed pond. Just use your Setchi disc that you've got. The ones you got at the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology. Check it out and see what your depth is. But one sure way to know if it's doing its job is if you see any filamentous algae growing up. If you've got filamentous algae growing up in 6 inches of water, you can't do much about that. But if it's growing in water 18 inches, 24 inches, then you probably don't have enough dye. But I think you're going to be just fine. Dave Weber from Kansas City. Good evening, Bob. The bulldozer just finished a half-acre bluegill pond, hatchery pond, nursery pond on my place. I have plenty of free river sand on my place, but no readily accessible pea gravel. If I use multiple 4x4 plastic tubs for spawning, let me click on that where it says see more. Do I give up much by using my free sand? No, you really don't. I tell you what you give up. What will happen with the sand is it's going to have more of a tendency to grow plants than gravel does. But what you could do is from time to time, you can take those containers and rough them up with a rake and get some of that organic matter to flush out with water. So you can, and they're easy to clean out. If you get plants growing in them, they're pretty easy to clean out. All right, so chocolate milk, Chris says, I would take some and put it in a jar. If you haven't done this yet, if you can get a 1 gallon glass pickle jar, put it on the shelf, see how much of that muck settles out. And if it settles out, then you got something physically stirring the water. If it doesn't, get about 3 or 4 more jars, leave one as a control, and then put a little bit of gypsum. Just take like 1 tablespoon of gypsum and put it in the second jar and mix it up real good. And then give it 4 or 5 days, see if the muck settles out. See if the silt, colloidal clay, whatever it is, see if it settles to the bottom and you get a layer and the water gets clear. If that happens, then take like 1/4 of a cup and start dipping water out of that jar number 2 and put some in jar number 3. And put, 1 scoop of that gypsum water into jar number 3 and put 2 scoops in jar number 4. And then see about how much that's going to take to cause the mud to settle out. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, a little math question. You got a gallon of water, weighs 8.3 pounds. You have to weigh a tablespoon of that stuff and then extrapolate. So if you can extrapolate about how many parts per million that you've got in here, you're going to have to do a little bit of math. Now, it sounds complicated. It is, but it's not that complicated. So you can do just a little bit of math, figure out your parts per million, then it's going to give you an idea as to how much gypsum that it's going to take. If that doesn't work, do it again and use aluminum sulfate. Or call for help. Call somebody like Josh Flowers or Greg Grimes that's on here. John Wilson oftentimes comes on this show. A lot of good guys out there that can help you figure that out. Sounds like Texas A&M's Aquaculture Research Center can do it too. Go online and look up Diagnostic Lab at Texas A&M Aquaculture Research Center. Find that website and look on the diagnostic opportunities there. I haven't done that. He showed it to me today, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't know about it. I should have known about that. Let's see, and Travis says, and you do a wonderful job in avoiding the dumb tax, waiting on the premium content. Thanks for all you do for us poor guys. Here we go. Hey, Brucey. There's Bruce Condello. Man, I want to catch up with you one of these days. I am officially homeless, buddy, and it's so exciting. I can't stand it. I'll catch up with you. John Radcliffe. Hey, Bob, I seem to have 4 to 6 cormorants and a couple of blue herons on a 4-acre pond. Should I persuade them to leave or just ignore them? We've worked hard at getting the otters out. I'll tell you how I see that. I see cormorants as I have watched double-crested cormorants dive under the water, come back up, have a 15-inch bass in its mouth, flip its head, the bass flips upside down, they swallow it whole, face first, head first. I have cut them open. A 15-inch bass that weighed 15 ounces was more than that. 1 pound, 15 ounces. That bird ate a bass that wasn't quite 2 pounds. So 15-inch bass is pretty big bass. So, but where I've got less heartburn is if you got a 4-acre pond where the bass are crowded and they're thinning them out for you. You know, that might not be a bad thing. But just a general rule, I'd much rather you harvest your bass in a controlled setting than just giving Mother Nature carte blanche. Otters, no. Otters, I mean, they're cute. They're pretty when they swim. They undulate, they're playful. And they'll chew the guts out of a 5-pound bass and leave the rest of it on your dock so you can admire its handiwork. 2 days before we moved out of Las Kalachkama, we caught a 2-year-old male otter that I'd seen signs of, and we trapped it and killed it, and the trapper took it with him because he's going to tan the hide of that fine, soft, furry little animal. So I'm going to tell you my general recommendation is if you've got cormorants camping on your lake, persuade them to leave. Look at there. Here comes Ron Ardwine. We can stay at the Cabone. Hey, I'll stay in the Cabone. That's pretty cool. Tommy Garrett. Hey, Bob. Hope you're well. Thank you. What's the best way to spray herbicide? Can I just spot spray or can I dump it in the creek? Don't ever dump it in the creek. If you're going to use herbicides, job number 1 is identify the plants that you want to treat. And be sure you're absolutely positive. I've got some premium content coming up that's going to cover these topics, but here's the skinny on it. You got to identify the plant. Once you know the plant, then you got to decide, is it harmful or not harmful? And if it's not harmful, but then you got to decide, is it invasive or not invasive? So once you decide that, yes, you do want to deal with those plants, you're going to want to deal with them where they sit. You don't want to put any kind of a broad brush herbicide into the creek and let it move to the plant. Most of the time that you're going to use herbicides, they're contact killers most of the time. And what that means is you got to get them on the plant in a certain parts per million in order for them to do their job. So you're going to be doing some selective spraying. And if you don't know what you're doing, seek help. Call a pro. Have them do it. Have them coach you how to do it. Talk to a supplier. Make sure that when you do talk to a herbicide supplier, odds are high that if you go to Tractor Supply and you buy a herbicide, they're not going to be able to tell you what to do with it. They're going to tell you how much it costs, and then they're going to read the label just like you would, and they might not interpret it because that's not what they do. So spend time on labels before you ever buy the product. All the labels are online. You can find those. So then, okay, I see. Totally kidding about that last part. Okay, I got it. Yeah, yes, you can spot spray. I'm going to tell you that because there's some herbicides or materials like Sonar, fluoridone is the active ingredient in that, where you've got to get it in so many parts per billion throughout the entire water column for it to do its job. But it's still selective on the kinds of plants. So be picky. Let's see, Michael Ehrig. Last spring I introduced a Texas Hunter feeder to a 32-year-old 5-acre central Iowa farm pond. I didn't feel real heavy as I wanted to only be supplemental food source. That's good thinking. This winter ice fishing, the largemouth bass looked healthier than they have for years, along with most of the bluegills. Is one feeder sufficient, or am I way better off adding another feeder this spring? I'll tell you what, the feeder manufacturers, they like to have one feeder for every 4 to 5 acres. In a 5-acre pond, depending on how it's shaped, I wouldn't be afraid to have 2 feeders. Now, I do think one feeder is going to be adequate for a 5-acre lake in Iowa. I really do. Especially for feeding a high-powered, high-protein fish food like Purina's Aquamax MVP. That's a great fish food for that setting. And yes, it is supplemental. Now, here's the deal. When you're feeding fish a high-quality, high-protein fish meal-based fish food throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall, you get those fish in great shape going into the winter. And you know, if those fish can make a living in the winter off of their body fat rather than metabolizing their flesh, they're going to come into the spring with a lot less catching up to do, and their mortality rates are going to be lower. So well-fed fish, even when it's supplemental, that's significant enough to impact your fishery from year to year to year. So that's a real big reason that I like to feed fish. That, plus it expedites growth rates. It takes fish to the next level in terms of how big they'll get. I mean, I've told this story many times to you guys that watch this show about how I used to tell people, and I'd stand in front of a crowd and say, hey, I've held, 5 or 10 2-pound plus bluegills that are 12, 13 inches long, and I've held probably 30 or 40 that are a pound and a half, but I've held thousands of them that are a pound to a pound and a quarter. Well, the difference now between this and 15 years ago is I've held literally thousands of 2-pound plus bluegills now. And the only difference is what they eat. And all those 2-pound bluegills, every single one of them have been supplementally fed by high-quality fish food like Aquamax MVP, designed specifically for bluegills, feed-train yellow perch, even feed-train largemouth bass. So, in Texas Hunter Feeders, this is a good time to give a shout-out because Texas Hunter Feeders helped sponsor this show. But you know what? I wouldn't let them sponsor the show if I didn't believe in them. The feeders are outstanding. Now, they're not cheap, but they're great. You're going to spend $850, plus a solar charger, plus some freight for a really good feeder. But you're also going to get great customer service and a product that's going to last 10 years. I have got 2 Texas Hunter feeders that I've had for 7 years that I've never had to do a thing to, as long as I let them empty and then take care of the battery. And that, and every once in a while I got to change a battery because that's batteries. That's not the feeder. So I'm a huge fan of Texas Hunter. I love Chris Blood. I love Cody. I love everybody, Dale Baden, everybody that works there, because they go over and above to provide you the best products, and they're highly responsive. And I'm also a big fan of Purina. You guys know that. Purina has been a sponsor for a long time. We go back 25 years. The thing I love about Purina the most is the fact that they have worked with guys like me, Greg Grimes, who's watching the show right now, unless he's bugged out to go do something with the wife and kids. My nose itches. If your nose itches, you're going to have company. Have you heard that before? Diet Coke. With nothing in it except Diet Coke. Anyway, Purina has worked hard to create products for you and for me, and I deeply appreciate that. David Schneiderman, Easy Docks. I love that. Greg Grimes is now a sponsor. Lakeworks, Aquatic Environmental Services, lakeworks.com. Check out Greg Grimes, especially if you're over in the East. And actually, Greg's been working on lakes now, probably in about 10 states. And his home base from Georgia, coming over toward Mississippi. I think he works on lakes in Illinois, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, northern Florida. So take a look at Greg Grimes. As a matter of fact, friend him. After the show, scroll back up, click on his name, and then friend Greg and talk to him. He'll help you. How do I feel about Troy Todd wants to know, how do I feel about Gamboozy and a 6-year-old pond? I'm going to tell you this. Look at that. There's Chico, Mike Garcia. Hey, Mike. Chico, I was just telling him a little bit about the premium content. Chico is the videographer and editor. He's done outstanding work to get this premium content ready to go. And he's done his part. Now the ball's in my court to get it, with the web developer and get it uploaded and turn it into a classroom setting where you guys can spend time and take a look at it. Troy Todd, how do I feel about Gamboozy and a 6-year-old pond? Well, I'll tell you how I feel about it but first let me tell you how I think about it. I think that Gamboozy are welcome in most ponds where they are native. You know, I'm a big proponent of using native species and keeping exotic species away. You know, like if you're in New England, Gamboozy are not native there. Don't use them there. So if they're native in your part of the planet, I love Gamboozy. I mean, they're one of the few live bearer warm water native fish, like in Texas, for example. But they're also called mosquito fish. Topwater minnows is a common name for Gamboozias. They eat mosquito larvae. They live in real shallow water. They're not a forage fish. So if you're going to stock them and think that they're going to be forage fish or game fish, think again. That's not going to happen. They're going to live in water 1 inch deep, 2 inches deep, you know, maybe 5 or 6 inches deep if they've got escape cover. So they just fill another niche, and that niche is to help eat insects. And without providing any substance or sustenance for game fish. So that's the way I see that. Let's see why it says, would you recommend adding crawfish to a pond? What are the disadvantages? I know the bass would like them. You know, I'll tell you what, I do like crawfish. Now, I kind of come from a school of two thoughts on crawfish. Now, if you want to stock crawfish to establish them, like I said a while ago about the Gamboozy, make sure you're stocking native crawfish. Don't call Ron Ardoin and get some of those red swamp crawfish in Holland, Minnesota. You're doing the ecology a total disservice. But if you want Ron to bag up some crawfish from one of his running buddies down there in the lowlands of Louisiana and haul them to southeast Texas, by all means do it. Now, there are different species of crawfish. I did a research paper 40-something years ago when I was in college. I didn't realize there were that many species of crawfish. You've got white ones, you got green ones, you got red ones. So the schools of thought are you can stock crawfish to feed your game fish, which a lot of people do that, especially in the South. You know, they'll buy 500 pounds of crawfish to feed the bass. The other school of thought is if you want to establish them. Now, always remember, we got 5 here. I need to preach this every dadgum show. We got to have happy water. We got to have prime habitat. We got to have a happy meal, which the food chain, got to have a great food chain. You got to have good genetics and a harvest plan. If you've got those 5 things in that order, things are going to work. So if you want to stock crawfish and expect to establish them, you got to have good water, and you got to have the right kind of habitat, and you got to have what they'll eat, and you got to have the right species for where you are. So you got to have the right genetics. You know, and so, you know, answering the question earlier of how do I get rid of mud bugs on my levee, that's because there's not a harvest plan. You know, you got good water for them. You got the right kind of habitat because they're thriving. You got food or they wouldn't be there. You got the right genetics because they're reproducing like crazy. But what you don't have is a harvest plan. That's why I said get you a trap and go trap them. Now, once you get some bass in there, they're going to feed on them. So that's where I'm going. So you've got 2 schools of thought. You can either stock them as a supplemental snack for game fish, especially bass, or you can stock them to establish them. Now, if you stock them this year and they don't establish, try it one more time next year. And if they don't establish, something's missing. So it's like the bass are eating them too fast, or they don't have the habitat, they don't have the right places to hide and escape. So that's about all I got to say about that for now. All right, John Radcliffe, what's a good thermometer to use to measure water temperatures? You know, spend some time on boat cycle manufacturing. Our good friend Ken Hale there has got all kinds of pond management supplies. But my favorite one, I don't know the name of it, but it comes in it's a long one about so long with a hoop on the top where you can tie a string on it, and then you pull it out of its container, and it's a mercury-based thermometer. Drop it down to where you want to get the temperature from, then pull it up, give it a few minutes, pull it up and read it, then you got it. Other way you can do that is with an oxygen meter that's got a thermometer on it. You know, but there's thermometers that are made for that. I don't know the name of it. I've never really looked at that. I just go look, find one, buy it. Let's see. Drew, hey, it's all good. Drew, I don't know how long, I will call you tomorrow. I'm going to be driving tomorrow. I'm going to find out what you got going. Clark Cole got a bug out early because the earphones he used to secretly listen to you during church are broken. Hey. Okay. I don't have anything real cute to say about that, Clark. I love you, man. Look at there. Brock Wren is telling Dan Snyder about us. Good to see Brock. Mike McPherson, do you check temps? I think that's temperatures in the entire water column or just the surface? Was looking at thermometers last night when work was slow. Mechanical or digital? You know, I'll tell you what I think. I'm a little bit of a science nut. So when I start checking temperatures, I really like to check them like in 1 to 2 foot intervals all the way to the bottom. Because if you do that, especially if you've got a dock that goes out into deeper water and you can do it off the end of the dock or out of the boat, you know, what you're going to see is you're going to see the patterns of temperature change, and you're going to also begin to see when your pond is going to stratify, because the temperature is going to tell you where the thermocline is. Because you're going to have warm temperature, warm, a little cooler, a little bit cooler, cold. There's your thermocline. And that's going to let you see when the thermocline forms. It's going to let you see what temperature the thermocline forms. It's going to let you see what your surface temperatures are compared to those within 2 feet of the thermocline. That's all pretty fun, nerdy science stuff that's meaningful. Because it's also going to tell you when your fish are spawning. You know, you're going to be able to see, if you know bass spawn at 62 degrees, you can be checking your temperatures at 62 degrees. You better see bass spawning. You know, they're going to spawn all the way up to 72 degrees. You know, so checking the temperatures at different intervals, I think is a really good idea. Mechanical or digital, I don't care. You know, the digital ones, they come with cables anywhere from 10 feet to 50 feet long on the digital scales. Now, I do have one of those laser ones, laser temperature, but it only hits the surface. You know, it doesn't shoot down under the water. Brock Wren, should we fertilize our pond? I don't know if that's 10 acres or 1/10 of an acre. Should we fertilize our pond before or after we kill the filamentous algae? Optimum stabilized. Okay, so if you're going to take out the algae, I'd treat the algae, and because that shows up in cooler water. You know, and I would fertilize after I treated the algae. And be sure, the secret to fertilization, for those of you that are going to look at doing that, is to get it done at the right temperature and get the fertilizer mixed in the water column, especially up high. If you get it mixed up in the water column in the top 3 feet of the water column, you're going to initiate a plankton bloom a little bit quicker. So, let's see here. Look at there. There comes Greg. He's saying the herring's not a problem. Get the cormorants out. They're about as bad as the otters. Yeah, the difference between big difference between the cormorants and the otters is otters usually eat your big fish one at a time that are 5, 6, 7 years old. Where cormorants can, you know, now let me tell you about cormorants. Cormorants, they send a scout bird. And when you see that very first cormorant come, get it out of there. Shoo it off. Show its Second Amendment rights. No, he didn't really say that. Make sure it's gone, because what it does is it seeks out the food source. Once it finds a food source, it goes and gets its buddies and comes back, and then they can wipe you out. So, a little bit more on cormorants. Doug Brown, cutting duck trails in a cypress pond. How deep should the trails be? Cutting duck trails. Thinking at least 4 feet deep, loads of habitat for bait fish throughout the trails. Huh. Cutting duck trails in a cypress pond. How deep should the trails be? And you're going to add habitat for, you know, the bait fish the habitat I'd be adding. Phone started ringing. If I was going to be cutting trails in a cypress pond, what are you cutting trails through? You know, if you're cutting trails through aquatic plants, then I'd be tempted to be adding spawning substrate if you don't have spawning substrate. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by cutting duck trails in a cypress pond. How deep should the trails be? Duck trails. I don't know. I'm not. My apologies. I'm not following that question very good. I'm not getting it. Bob should be recognized by A&M School of Business. Well, why don't you call him up and make that happen, Danny Mac? All right, Billy Bates checking in. Let's see. Read the label, Danny. Yep. Oh, there's Vito checking in. Good to see Vito. Michael Eric's feeding MVP. Frank James, just got back from my pond. The trout and bass are killing it. That's good, man. I'm glad to hear that. That's really, really cool. No golden shiners available, Rudy Billing says. Rosy red, crappie shiners, or bass shiners for established pond. If you're gonna use minnows, look at those bass shiners. Bass shiners are golden shiners. They're just not full grown. And they're big enough that they can escape predation and big enough that they can reproduce. And I'd buy those soon before they start having babies. All right, Frank James, do I think tilapia will be available for stocking this year despite the big chill? I've not made that call yet to ask people. I saw some tilapia today at the Texas A&M Research Center, Aquaculture Research Center. So I think those guys that know what they're doing with tilapia, if they were able to overcome the power outages, then there will be tilapia. But I have not made that call. I am going to call and check on that. Let's see here. Troy Todd in Southern Indiana near Hidden Hollow Ranch. Tell Tony I said hello if you get to see him. Danny Mack says baby bass like Gamboozias. That's true. Here we go. Mike Garcia, stay tuned. Tommy Garrett, finally getting around to building my bluegill beds this coming weekend with some pea gravel. Should they be close to cover or near the feeder? I would get them away from the feeder, close to cover. So what you want is you want your spawning beds not where a bunch of big fish are going to be attracted to feed, but off to the side of that. So when the baby fish spawn, as a matter of fact, if I had my way, I'd have a shelf maybe 3 feet deep. And if that shelf 3 feet deep is, say, 30 feet long, I'd take the middle 10 feet. That's where I'd put the pea gravel. And then I would expect aquatic plants to grow on each side of those spawning beds. And if that happens, then those fry can come right off the beds, go straight into some dense cover like American pondweed, bushy pondweed, eelgrass, things like that are good. That's good choices. Okay, let's see here. Let me see what we got on here. Thinking of putting pallets shaped like a teepee in my pond. What's the benefit versus snagging on the wood? Golden shiners will spawn on those, Jason. They will, especially if it's shallow water, fairly close to the edge of the pond. And fatheads will spawn on them, and baby, fry will hide in them. So that's good stuff. All right, John Radcliffe, in case anyone was curious, found the thermometer. There it is right there, boat cycle. Tell Ken Hale we sent you. Jim 10, my half-acre pond is only about 8 feet deep at its deepest point. Would pond dye and water hyacinths be the trick for a cooler refuge? I would not use water hyacinths for any reason ever, because that stuff is so dadgum invasive that you just don't want it. Pond dye, let me tell you a little bit about pond dye. This time of year, pond dye is okay, but what you don't want is you don't want pond dye dominating the watercolor in late April, May, June when your fish are spawning, because it really interferes with primary productivity of the food chain that feeds your baby fish. So the reason to use pond dye now, we're actually getting it toward the back side of the window of using that stuff, is to minimize the risk of growing a whole lot of filamentous algae and having to deal with that. And that's what David Schneiderman was talking about a while ago. He dyed his brand new pond so he doesn't get a whole lot of algae. All right, Ron Arduan's at the Cabone, drinking beer, caught some fish. He's tagging some fish. There was a while that Ron was a little bit worried about whether he had any bass or not until he figured out that they just weren't hungry because they look like Alabama deputy sheriffs, is what Ray Scott says. Look at there. So he's talking about his fish. So let me see here. I'm going to run out of time. Holy cow, this has gone by fast. Let's see. Replying to Tommy, Jason Rowledge. Okay, I got that. David Hoskins, hi, Palm Boss. It's David and Kentucky's wife. Oh, hey. Glad you're watching. Thank you. Let's see. Look at there. Shepherdsville. Golly, everybody's having conversations. I love it. There's Matt Rail. Hey, you know what? You guys need to check out Matt Rail. Check out his PWNF site. He's got some outstanding podcasts. Matter of fact, his podcasts have skyrocketed. And I'm so thrilled for Matt Rail's successes. He is a shooting star. He's a superstar in our business. So you ought to take a little time with him. There's Jim McCrae from Laurinburg, North Cackalack. Good to see Jim. I miss working with you too, buddy. We've had some great times at Richmond Mill Lake. I'm not done. We'll circle back through there. Debbie wants to make a road trip, and I think we'll do that. Where we can take maybe a month and just go hit a whole bunch of hot spots. I see a flashlight outside. That means I'm about to get invaded by grandchildren. So that means it's just about time for me to rock and roll. All right, let's see here. I'm going to go down here and see what else we got. Tony Lawrence, what do you recommend for man-made structure other than pallets for deeper structure in a retention pond? You know, I'll tell you, man-made structure, I'll tell you what, I love PVC pipe. I love it because it provides a lot of cover and you don't hang up on it. You know, and if you put it together right, meaning like if you take a 1-inch piece of PVC, 6 feet tall, come down 6 inches from one end, drill a 1/2-inch hole, which sounds easy. It's not easy. Drill a 1/2-inch hole, then take a 6-foot piece of 1/2-inch PVC pipe and stub through it, spin it a quarter turn, drop 6 inches. Those kind of things coupled together in units, that's good. I've used tires. As long as you drill holes in the tires and let the air out, which that sounds kind of funny, but you got to drill holes or they'll float. I promise. So I love tires. I love using all kinds of things that you can. I mean, I've used everything from fence posts in concrete in buckets with cedar strapped to it. just be creative and add some stuff. So if you've got, use brush piles. You know, use some hardwood limbs trimmed off trees around the house. Frank James, water hyacinths usually cause more water heating, according to research I read years ago. That sure could be. All right, let me see what else we got here. Ron, with hurricanes, flooding, and pushing undesirable fish into new ponds and lakes before they've been properly stocked, or some pond owners put adult bass in before establishing the food chain, I know I have to double or triple the bluegill. Yep, that's exactly right. Ron's learning the game. That's it. What are your thoughts of new ponds that have undesirable fish before proper stocking? Depends on what's in there. You know, if we're overcrowded with bass and we're overcrowded with green sunfish or something, I'll tell people let's rote no and start over. You know, if it's an accident, that's one thing. But if you did it on purpose because there's your dumb tax right there. Let's pay some dumb tax. Go spend $110 a gallon for rote no, 1 gallon per acre foot, and let's kill the fish because you pay the dumb tax. Let's start over. There's Latham Pugh checking in from East Texas. Good to see you. All right. Hey, guys, you know what? Holy cow, I'm so excited to spend some time with you. I always appreciate you tuning in. This is great fun. I see Stan Lee. I love Stan Lee. Stan Lee's hanging out in Virginia now. A great friend of one of my sons. I love him. And I love you guys, and I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight. I'm not sure where I'll be next Wednesday, but this might be a backdrop that you start getting used to because I'm going to be here quite a bit. I'm looking forward to being homeless for a while till we find our final place or our next place, or I don't know how to say that. So anyway, hey, thanks for tuning in.